Um, I do edit, I read and edit all of the reports that come through. At any time that you're working on your report, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. This is my email with Clemson, and I check that fairly regularly, and that would be the best way to contact me. Let you take a picture, sorry. So today, I'm going to take each of the items from the report that you'll need to address and give you some examples of how those answers have been responded to in very different ways, just depending on the style of the writer that the person is that's submitting the report. So there's no right or wrong. Don't feel that way at all. And there are some other people who edit after I review it. So if there were any grammatical errors or anything like that, we would catch it and we would be able to fix it and just keep on moving, okay? Remember that for the field project, you have up to 2 years to complete the certification, and Dr. Addis talked to you about those two different components. The field project itself, the report, has 23 questions that you answer about your project, and each of you should have a copy of these at your table, and we'll look at each one of those individually. So the first thing I want you to think about is, what are you already doing now, currently, to try to prevent dropout? Because you probably all are already doing something. So when I ask you to think about that, it's so that you can not think of something else you need to do, not something more you need to do, or in addition to what you're already doing. This, we hope, is a way for you just to document the work that you're already doing, okay? I will share some ideas with you during the presentation, share some other projects that are out there. Some of them are on the website already, some of them have not quite made it there. But the first question, number 1, asks you for your project name or the title. And these are 3 examples. The first one was called Bucks. That was actually, the Buccaneers were the school's mascot. And so they chose to use that Bucks as the title of their program. And in this project, they developed a mentoring program and provided incentives for students who had good attendance. So that was their connection. The middle project, MLI, 2016 Dropout Prevention Summit. After coming to a summit, this group of people decided to host one of their own. So they had a conference, a one-day conference, and in that conference they had keynote speakers that addressed graduation and dropout prevention. They also had breakout sessions, much like what you've done today, and they documented their summit as their project. The third is called DROP, which is the Dropout Recovery Options Program. This is in Clayton County in Georgia, and it was an academy that was created for students who were not going to be getting their graduation, their diploma, and they developed a program with this academy for that kind of student, and so they just documented that particular project. Any questions so far? All right, the second question, if you're following along with me, is the project location or site. So this, you're just going to put where the school is, what state it's in, what town it's in, for people to be able to contact you or the actual school itself. Number 3, if you happen to include a website in your project, this is where you would put that website. And this is an example for you. This particular project is called Success Stories. And this was an alternative school that videoed students and interviewed them basically and asked them, you know, why are you staying in school? How does it make you feel? How is this non-traditional school different from the traditional school? How is it helping you? And the purpose of it was to, number one, it increase the kids' self-esteem just by being interviewed for the project. So they interviewed several different students. And then secondly, they were able to share the videos with other students who might come to them struggling or with challenges. So this is a place for you to insert any kind of link that you might have, if you do have one. Number 4 is just simply your contact information. So your name, your position, information for other practitioners to be able to contact you should they have questions or want to learn more about your particular project. Number 5, pick 3 to 8 keywords that would give the reader an idea of what your project is about. And I refer to this as the filter. This allows the reader ahead of time to know if they want to read more about your project or not. So you just come up with the keywords that you think are important. Here are some examples. Alternative education program in mentoring. Another example, again, alternative education, student advocate specialist. So that was unique for that project. Truancy, collaborative partners, the judicial system. Many of the projects that we've read so far typically have some kind of community engagement or stakeholders as part of the project as well. So you would want to pull that out if you could. And then last, we have the non-traditional high school. Their keywords were credit recovery, mentoring, community involvement. They implemented a teacher as advisors program, and they also had an increased learning time for students that was like a remediation period for students. So take just a second and turn to your neighbor and just talk about what you're already doing as your project, and you know that you're going to use that, or just brainstorm some things that you might be able to document that you're already doing. Turn and talk. All right, let's pull back together, please. Have to do it like elementary school. Let's pull back together. I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt. I wish I could just let you continue your good conversations that you're having. Number 6 on the report is your project funding source. So that is simply, how is your project going to receive funds? Here are some examples. This one particular project, they had a grant that funded it. Here, this was local school funds, funded their program. Partnership here with Clayton County Public Schools and the Workforce Investment Opportunities funded this particular project. And then I showed you an example here where a portion of the funding came from one source and another portion came from another entity. Once you tell us how your project is funded, then the next thing you need to do is give us a breakdown of how that money was spent. And it varies from paper to paper that I read on what this section looks like. Here, it's just a very simple one-sentence explanation. Funding includes a portion of the program director's salary and incentives for student participants. Multi-year funding is in place with the opportunity to grow the project to include future scholarships funding for participants. So a very simple explanation. Here you can see this one looks a little different. It's more of a line item kind of budget. Shows exactly what they've spent their money on for the project. And then here's even a third one that looks a little bit different. All gives you the same information, just depends on how you most easily can describe that. Yes?
So has anyone ever submitted a project that there was no need for money?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you answer that question, that's all you need to say.
Okay.
That did not require any additional funding.
Okay.
I have another question with that. So additional funding would be on top of what was already in place. So like say you're doing something that's already in place, like you wouldn't put your salary in there if you're already an employee for.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. All right, number 8 is the scope and the setting. This is the one that I get questions about most often, and in this section, I tell you that this is really giving the reader some background information about your project. You're setting the stage for the reader. Help yourself. And here are a couple of examples. Both of these are narrative in fashion, and it just sets the stage for what's going to happen in the project. Give you just a second to take a look at those. Now, I had to pick, I picked these two examples because they're both short, but sometimes in this section, you'll need to say more in order for the reader to really understand, so don't feel limited to just one simple paragraph. Some of the scope and settings will be multiple pages, but these just happen to be short and they fit on the PowerPoint. All right, number 9. Staffing. Who was used as staff for the project? You can use names of individuals and or just titles. Here you can see this example, they used the superintendent, the high school principal, and the district instructional coach. This is another example, the school counselor, and they actually have the individual's name, a second school counselor, and then an alternative graduation pathway committee. And then last, this is a very simple one, there are 3 school counselors, 55 teachers, and 25 service personnel. So just keep it simple. Number 10, the population that you serve from your project. This looks different again from one report to the next. This is a table that was included in this particular report, and they were able to show the breakdown of the population by grade level. Here are a couple of different ways that people have reported this information. It's like a bullet item. They just answered just what the question was asking. The bottom one says number of students, and the answer was 30. So it can be very simple. This is yet another example from a presentation or a project that I just actually read last week. And I would imagine that they were able to get this from somewhere and just pull it and put it into their project. So feel free to do that as well. This particular shot shows free and reduced lunch. It also gives you a breakdown of ethnicity, gives you a gender distribution, and student enrollment. Number 11, how did the project originate and how was it developed? So in this section, you're just telling us, when did you start thinking about the project? What made you start thinking about doing this as a project? Here are a couple of examples. This one says, after attending the At-Risk National Forum in February, the counseling team began reviewing student records to identify students at risk of not graduating with their cohort. So you're just telling the story from the beginning of your idea for your project. It could have been something that occurred at this conference, or it could be because of a conversation that you had with a counselor at your own building or at your own location.
Can you go back in time, like say, like maybe, like if I've got a project going on now, but like it actually started like 4 years ago, I just didn't realize like what that was going to lead up to. Like,
Right.
I can go back and do. Okay,
Absolutely, yes. Number 12, what were the issues and or needs addressed by the project? And again, you can see, you put it in a bullet list, or you can write it out in more of a narrative form. Bottom one says, dropout rate was primary issue addressed by the project. The dropout rate exceeded state and national averages, making graduation rate an issue that we wanted to enhance when beginning the program. Number 13, what were the desired outcomes and measurable objectives of the project? In this example, they actually used a number, so it is a measurable objective. It's decrease the dropout rate by 10% over a 3-year period. Their second outcome was, or measurable objective, was to increase the graduation rate by 10% over a 3-year period. And in this particular example, you don't see a number, but it's you know what they mean in their wording. It says we measured dropout rates and graduation rates 3 years prior compared to 3 years after the program's implementation. We desired to reduce dropout rates significantly while raising graduation rates. Number 14, the strategies. What strategies did you implement in the project in order to meet your outcomes? And this is an example. This one was a tiered intervention, and you can see it had 3 levels, and this is how they decided to show their strategies. Here's the same thing, but it looks a little bit different. In this example, they just wrote out in words, in sentences, what their strategies were that they were using. And here you can see that we've even had, again, bullet lists just turned in. Number 15, what's the timeline of the project? So when did it start? And especially if it started a long time ago, if you don't have, like this example has actual months when they did each step. But if it was so long ago that you can't remember it, you don't have to do it that way either. The second one here says the project was approved for a 5-year period beginning October 2010 through September 2015, but they got an extension for another year. Yes?
But I'm understanding there's a 2-year process to complete this project. Seems like they took 5.
I don't know when this one was developed, but I don't know, they may have received the money then at that time, and I don't remember this one in particular to be able to answer that question.
We would be bound based on a 2-year project.
Right, and Dr. Addis is not in here anymore. Tomorrow, when you're in the main hall, stop by and see Jenny and ask her about that. Good question, thank you. All right, number 16, any special conditions or expertise or skills that are required to carry out the project. In this particular example, there was a partnership between the Career Center and the local school district, and they needed expertise in middle-level education. So this was a middle school project. In the bottom section, this one had to do with students being allowed to take fewer elective credits in order to graduate. And so they had to receive, their board had to change a policy in order for that to happen. So that was a special condition of this particular project. And they were working very closely with the counselor who needed expertise in building relationships and working with families. All right, 17, what were the actual outcomes? So this portion, this is where you're going to tell us what really ended up happening. And I think the easiest way to do this part is go back to number 13, your desired outcomes, and just reference each outcome with the result that occurred. So graduate from high school with a post-secondary plan, and you can see the outcome directly tied to that is 89% of the participants did graduate with a post-secondary plan. Any questions about this one? Okay, number 18. What and how are or were the outcomes related to school completion, dropout prevention, and/or graduation rates? And so this one, you can see it's very clear that they are referring back to attendance here. The second one says the creation of the success videos encouraged some students to come back to school and encouraged others to keep going. As well, the video encouraged staff to continue working hard and to never give up. Every student matters and every student has a story. Number 19, the current status of the project. So when you submit your form, your answers to these questions, when you submit your project, just tell us where it is right now. You can see we have projects that are just still ongoing. They haven't come to an end yet. Some projects have come to an end. Some they're currently in year 1 or just year 2. That's fine. That's all you need to say in that section. And number 20, your role. This is important, and I mentioned this to the group in the back. Is anybody else planning to do a group project? Okay. In this section, you all can write it together so the report can look the same, but in this section, you need to explain your individual role. So you can work, if the report can look the same, but this will be unique to you and what you did. And everyone, even if you do a group paper, every person submits their own report, okay? So this person on the top left was a coordinator. Then we had a program coordinator for the College Pals mentoring program. And this person on the bottom, more programs, the relationship matters. Oh, that was current status, sorry. I goofed up on that one. Number 21, lessons learned. These are some of the common lessons learned that people name in their project. The ability to persist and not give up. Relationships matter. I know you all know that in dealing with at-risk students, is relationships do matter. Seeking innovative interventions was important. And real-time accurate student progress tracking is key to early intervention and can affect student outcomes dramatically. And this lesson is actually from someone who's going to be able to speak to you in just a few moments. Number 22, what advice would you give other dropout prevention practitioners about the project? And these are some of the comments that I pulled out of the reports that I've been reading recently. I think just about every project has something about collaboration and stakeholder involvement. Yes, community involvement. And this paper, they talked a lot about celebrating accomplishments, that it's so easy to get bogged down and not want to persist and move forward, and that they put in incremental times where they would actually celebrate just even one little step or one student that had done something, made better decisions. So I thought that that was a unique one to that particular report. And then last, number 23, any other additional information that you haven't already addressed. The reports vary in length. Sometimes they are 4 pages, and then some reports are many, many more pages. It just depends on if you're using charts, that's going to take up more room versus if you just write out in sentences. So that is up to you. These are just a few helpful tips. One is, when you're involved in a project like this, it becomes your own. And sometimes when you write the report, you might leave out information that you didn't even realize that you were leaving out that was important to the reader to know. So my suggestion to you, if you can coerce or bribe somebody into reading your project before you submit it for that purpose, to say, does it make sense, and is everything in here that needs to be in? And if it's someone not so quite tied so closely to the project, they usually can read for that purpose. Think about everything being clear for the reader. This is what I ask myself as I'm reading the reports, is if the reader, who would be another educator, a counselor, a dropout prevention specialist, whomever that person is, will they have a clear understanding of your project and the impact that it had? And if I can answer those 2 questions after reading the paper, then it moves forward, and we are able to get it on the website, and then you get your certificate.